Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now, when you think of a tank, what do you think of? A massive 50-ton hunk of metal? A huge vehicle the size of a British Tog 2? Many tanks were like that, but have you heard of the French super light tank known as the ELC Even-90? The tank was a tiny vehicle with just 2 crew. It was barely bigger than a car. In today's video, we'll be building one of these super light tanks in LEGO, and trying to make it be as realistic as LEGO allows. So I know that the algorithm will hate me for this, but we're going to start with a little bit of math. So we want this LEGO model to be as realistic as possible. One of the most important part of that is dimensions. Now, for the sake of this video, we are going to assume that one stud is the same as 1 foot. Now, here are the dimensions. Note that the dimension block is approximate because I found several different sources with varying sizes. But from what I've seemed to find, the dimensions are 17.5 feet long, 7.5 feet wide, 7.5 feet tall. So when building this tank, we're going to try to stay as close to those dimensions as we can while still not losing any detail or proportions. With all of that boring math out of the way, we can actually start building this big hunk of metal, or hunk of plastic. When designing this tank, I knew that starting with the tracks would be the most important. By starting with the tracks, I'll get the length right immediately, and I can connect them together with the proper length of brick to basically have the proper sized frame. As you can see, the ELC Even-90 has 2 drive wheels, 5 wheels to stabilize the track, as well as 4 smaller ones on the top. I couldn't find a way to mount the smaller ones on top, but other than that, I got it all realistic. After building said frame, I can move on to actually building the body of the tank within the frame. I found that surprisingly, I had plenty of extra space within the tank. In other builds I've done, there hasn't been any room to cram any details in, but for some reason, the way I built this model let me have a little fun in the interior. So, for the first of the 3 interior details, I'm building a small cockpit. The ELC Even-90 was a 2-man tank with 1 person in the hull acting as a driver and radio operator, and 1 person in the turret acting as the gunner, loader, and commander. This 2-person crew was all that could fit in the tank, but it sure did put a large load on the crew. For my cockpit, I found that I didn't have any room for a steering wheel, but instead I used 2 control panels to at least represent the controls of the tank. Now, what the second interior detail is, you guys don't get to see yet, but that axle will be important. Okay, so with the body of the tank done for the moment, I can connect the treads to it, and wow, the tank is really starting to come together. The proportions are looking good, the size is just about right, and we can move on to the tread skirts. The ELC Even-90 has tread skirts that go slightly past the end of its tracks, and they only go on top of the tracks, instead of curving down to cover the tracks like other tanks do. For my tank tread skirts, I just used a 2-stud wide plate with some tiles and slopes on top of it. Editor's note: getting that single audio clip took way too long. Okay, so now it's time to build the back of the tank. I had so much trouble trying to find a good image of the back of the ELC Even-90. There are numerous pictures of it from the front and side angles, but a good back shot was just hard to come by. I did find this shot from a 3D model of it, and that's just going to be what I have to base the back off. In my opinion, I do think I nailed the back of the tank. I used the grate pieces all along in a line along the top of it, as well as a 1x1 bar piece for the trailer hitches, and what with those 2 details and the angling, well, I'm just very pleased. Okay, so now I can show you the other 2 interior sections for my tank. In the back of it, it seemed like the obvious choice to build a small engine. I honestly just grabbed a bunch of random interesting pieces and threw them together to get this look. What with the binocular piece and the fan, I think it came out really well. For the other compartment, I was a little stumped. I debated putting in some random animal or a crystal piece, but then it dawned on me. What do engines run on? Fuel. A knockdown tank later, I had finished the interior of the build. So now it's time to cover up the tank. I used 2 different panels for this, so that way I could easily access the different parts of the interior one at a time. I made sure to add some little details onto the panels, like whatever this round dish is, as well as those boxes in the back right, which I used ingot pieces for. I also used the rail pieces to cover up the little gap in the back of the tank. I also built a hatch for the tank. While the hatch should be a 2x2 if it were proportional to the rest of the tank, the minifigure's torsos are wide, so I made it a 2x4 for the sake of letting the minifigures stick out of the tank and actually fit out. And with that, we finished the entire body of the tank. I think I captured all the needed details, what with the light of the tank, the back grate, the round dish, and the general shaping. Now we can finish it off by building the turret section. Now, instead of talking about what I'm building while showing you the turret build process, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the ELC Even-90 has an off-center turret and gun. Disclaimer: I have not found any source that clearly states the reason, however, I know enough about tanks that I feel qualified to give my hypothesis. Okay, so first off we have a gun that is mounted on the right side of the turret. Why? Here's why. You have to fit a person inside the turret, and the turret is tiny. Now imagine having to fit a person on the side of the gun. He'd get about a third of the turret to himself, and you would waste the space on the other side of the turret. By having the gunner on the side of the gun, he has more space, and not a bit of the turret is wasted. So why is the turret mounted off-center as well? When a tank shoots its main weapon, there is a lot of kickback. From memory, I believe the ELC Even-90 had a 70mm gun that would have been very punchy. If the force of the kickback is off-center, that will seriously hurt the tank over time and cause damage to suspension. by having the turret offset, the gun becomes centered and the main tank can operate smoothly. Phew, that was a lot of me nerding out, but if you can't tell, I really like tanks. One detail that I'm very happy to have been able to add is the French flag to the side of the turret. Instead of gray cheese slopes, I replaced 3 of them with a dark blue, white, and red to give a splash of color to the tank, as well as make sure that everyone knows the ELC Even-90 is a French tank. I also used a 3x3 dish piece to make the hatch of the tank. As for the guns of the tank, I used a joystick piece for the machine gun, which turned out to be perfect. The base of the joystick is domed, and the lever is super skinny, which helps it scale properly. The main gun uses a 2x2 wide dome with a couple of Technic pieces sticking out of it to act as the barrel. And that's the finished turret. Now I can just mount it onto the tank and the build is finished. In my other videos, I would normally transition into a showcase montage where I lore dump some details about my own builds, but as this tank actually exists and I gave details about it all throughout the video, I'm going to A, do an accuracy check, and then B, talk a little bit about the tank. So first off, we are going to do a brief accuracy check. First off is dimensions. As stated earlier in the video, it should be 18 by 8 by 8 studs. I'll be the first to admit, I made it too big. My model is 20 studs long, 10 studs wide, and the height is 10 studs. So while it's 2 studs too long in every dimension, it is however the right proportions, but just a little bit blown up. I want to illustrate how accurate it is by showing it right next to the real thing. Note that these shots are taken from slightly different angles, so that mine looks a little taller than it is, but as you can see, mine is just too tall. If I find an easy way to make it smaller, I'll make a YouTube short about it. And now I want to talk a little bit more about the build process and my thoughts on it. I've always loved the ELC Even-90 ever since I came across it. I first saw it while playing World of Tanks and then did a bit of research on it and it became my favorite tank. The obvious next move was to build it in LEGO, so I got out my parts, did some math and started building. My original model was 22 studs long, but I shrunk it down. My early model also did not have any Easter eggs inside it, nor did it have the French flag. I'm very pleased with how fast I was able to design it, and it looks very good on my shelves. Anyway, thank you to everyone who did watch to this point in the video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave a like down below as it really does help with the algorithm. Stay tuned for my next video in which I have something pretty exciting planned. Until my next video everyone, keep building your imagination and have a good one.